Well, as I speak, millions of new illegal aliens are set to flood into the country as the Trump-era Title 42 ends this weekend. Mark Meckler, president of the Grassroots Action Group Convention of States, recently hosted How Many More rally in Austin, Texas, to help put a stop to the madness down at the border. He says it's time for the U.S. government to officially declare the Mexican drug cartels as terrorists. Please welcome back to the show, Mark Meckler. Mark, great to have you here.
Thank you, Governor. Good to be with you.
You have spent a lot of time on the border. Even before you came out here tonight, you were in contact with border agents who are down there right now dealing with a mess. How bad is it? Do we know how bad it is?
No, we have no idea. I'll tell you, I really started to dig into the issue about 90 days ago. I thought I understood. I think most conservatives know it's bad, but it's so much worse than you can imagine. There's a full war zone going on the border. We have full slave trade in the United States of America. We have a person die of fentanyl poisoning every 7 minutes. And the carnage on the border literally looks like a war zone. It's hard to even describe it. The photos I've seen, decapitated bodies, dismembered bodies, literally people being scalped alive, people with their heads blown off by shotguns. I mean, the horrors are unimaginable down there.
So we keep hearing from the left that this is just a humanitarian effort to let people come and find hope. But that's not what this is. The drug cartels are the ones that are trafficking little girls to turn them into sex slaves, and they're bringing mountains of fentanyl that are killing over 100,000 Americans every year, and not at the border, all over the country in all 50 states.
Yeah, wherever you live, this stuff is infecting your town. It's a $150 billion a year business. It's high dollars, it's high weaponry. They have a full army down there on the border. They have operational control of both sides of the borders. We literally have been invaded, and there's no serious reaction to that coming from our federal government.
Why not? I think a lot of us are just scratching our heads and saying, look, it's one thing to say, oh, we want people to be able to come. They want to come for a better life. That's not what this is. This is an invasion of people. They're not coming for a better life. They're coming to traffic little kids, turn them into sex slaves, bring drugs, make a lot of money, and kill anybody that gets in their way.
Yeah, I was on the phone yesterday morning with former Border Patrol Commissioner Mark Morgan, asking that very question, Governor. I don't understand. Why would our government allow this? And he said it's entirely political. What they're doing is flooding the zone with millions of what they think eventually will be new citizens. Illegal immigrants are now counted in the census. So that means these states will get extra representation. They believe they're all going to be Democrat voters. So it is a cold-hearted political ploy in which literally tens of thousands of people are dying and suffering, and they don't care because they're doing it for politics.
I mean, I don't even want to believe that people are so cold-hearted that they would allow this kind of suffering and the humanitarian crisis. Forget the economic impact, but this kind of abuse of human beings, and they don't care because if they feel like they can pad the voter rolls.
Yeah, it's horrifying. And for me, it's sort of looking at this up close, turned it for me into a humanitarian crisis. This is not about immigration. This is not about migration. This is about human beings. And for me as a Christian, I looked at that. The reason we called the rally How Many More is I said, I got to ask myself that question. For me as a Christian, how many more young kids am I willing to allow to be sold into sexual slavery? I ask people, take out a piece of paper and write down your number. How many more families torn apart by fentanyl deaths? Write your number. As a Christian, what do you think is the okay number? Of course, for Christians, the number is 0. None of us believe that this is okay. And so we have to step up as self-governing citizens and demand that our government does something about it.
Well, speaking of that, the government doesn't seem to be doing much about it. I know you head the organization Convention of States. That really is a grassroots effort to say there are some things constitutionally we can do that sort of goes around Congress and the people get to make some decisions. How does it work?
So generally speaking, Article 5 of the Constitution allows the states to gather when 34 states decide they want to get together and they want to talk about things they want to do to amend the Constitution. In our case, specifically to limit the power of the federal government. So we could impose term limits on the federal government, and not just Congress, by the way, the deep state, the folks that we've learned in the last few years are actually running the government. We can impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, a balanced budget amendment, tax caps, spending caps. We can impose jurisdictional restraints. In other words, telling them, no, you can't run our schools. You can't be involved in our healthcare. These are things the federal government was never intended to do. And I think importantly, one of the reasons I ended up involved in this issue is Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution says when there's an invasion, we can actually do something about that in the states. And so I live in Texas, and there's 1,300 miles of contiguous border with Mexico. It's the longest contiguous border with Mexico in the United States. We in Texas are going to be required to step up because the federal government's not doing it.
You know, I think people need to learn more about the Convention of the States. There are some conservatives that say, oh, we don't want that. It could go off the rails. I'm thinking, how could anything go off the rails more than what we see with our own government, which is out of control, unchecked, and really unhindered by any sense of rule of law? That's what frightens me.
Absolutely. And, you know, I want to address that. There are some conservatives who are worried about it going off the rails. They need to understand where those arguments come from. Those arguments all come from radical leftist organizations. This goes as far back as Chief Justice Warren Burger, who gave us Roe versus Wade, the most evil decision in modern history of the Supreme Court. And these are the ones who put the idea of the runaway convention into the American mind. And they do it to keep people like you and me and our audience, good conservatives, from using the Constitution to save the Constitution.
I hope we can find some sanity in this country. I truly do. For our audience, if you'll head over to Huckabee.tv, we will give you links to Mark Meckler and the Convention of the States action on social media.